So now I want to talk to you about something that we call the wildcard if. So in this example, we have several patients, 26 patients, and we have a variable that tells us what was the treatment that these patients received. So we can see that patient 1 received ceftriaxone, paracetamol, and vitamin A. Patient 4 received amoxicillin, paracetamol, and vitamin A. Patient 10 did not seem to have received any antibiotic, neither patient 13. We can see that patient 16 has also received tetracycline. This is most likely the eye ointment. Here, as did patient 19, also seems to have received tetracycline. Patient 20 has received both ceftriaxone and amoxicillin upon discharge. So we have this variable here, which is a treatment variable that has a lot of information, and it's very difficult to make sense of this information. We need to be able to filter down to see, well, did this patient receive ceftriaxone? Yes or no? But it's very difficult to find that the way that the data is set up here. So what we need to do is that we need to transform the treatment variable into several dummy variables. And when I use the word dummy here, I'm not being irreverent at all. What we need to do is that if we look with careful at the treatment column, we can see that almost all of the patients, if not all the patients, have received these medications: ceftriaxone, amoxicillin, vitamin A, paracetamol, or tetracycline. And what we need to do is that for each of these five medications, actually paracetamol, I don't really care, but for the other medication, we need to see if the patient received that medication or not. So what we need is a variable that says ceftriaxone, or let's start by amoxicillin just to go alphabetically. And we need to say, did this patient receive amoxicillin? No, this patient did not receive. The second one did not receive. The third one did not receive. The third one, the fourth one did receive the amoxicillin. This is great, but we cannot do it by hand. If we had a few patients, it could be possible, like 26, it is still possible. But when I have a larger table, this is not possible. So how can we do this? So to do this, we're actually going to use three separate functions from Excel, and then we're going to nest them one inside the other. So I'll just come here to cell C4. I'm going to start off by using the equal sign, and the first function I'm going to use is the search function. And the search function just does just what the name implies. It searches for something somewhere. So we open parentheses, we open quotation marks. I'm going to start by amoxicillin, but I'm not going to write the entire word amoxicillin because you can see that the spelling of amoxa can be a bit different. Sometimes it could be amoxil, it could be amoxa, like I just pronounced it. It could be amoxicillin. So I just want Excel to find these three letters in this word, in this sequence: AMO for amoxicillin. I close quotation marks, I type in a comma, and then I make a relative reference to cell B4. And when I close parentheses and press enter, I get an error message. Don't worry, this is what we want. Because in fact, Excel did not find AMO or amoxicillin in cell B3. But if we copy down this formula a bit lower, we can see that in places where where Excel has found amoxicillin, it's replaced with a number. So where we don't see the word that we're looking for, we get a value, an error message. And when we do find it, we get a number. And we can just copy down all the way down. We can maybe double check to see that, well, here there is amoxicillin, we get a number. Here there's also amoxicillin, we also get a number. Places where we don't have amoxicillin, we don't find a number. So what we can do next, we're going to use the second function to help us. We again go to the equal sign, and now we're going to go to a function that has a very intuitive name, isNumber, and just make a reference to the previous cell C4 and close parentheses. And what this function is doing is exactly as the name implies. It's telling us if the content of a cell is a number or not. In case it is not, we get a false. In case it is, let's see what happens. We get a true. So we can just copy down this formula to all of our values. And we get now that all the patients that have received amoxicillin, we have a true. Those that have not received amoxicillin, we get a false. But we don't want to say true or false. We wanted a yes or no, remember? So we're going to go for our third function, is the if function, which we should be familiarized with by now. We open parentheses. In this case, our logical test is going to be asking if the content of cell D4 is equal to true. If so, we want the outcome to be a yes. We write that between quotation marks because it's text. If not, we want the output to be a no. We close parenthesis, and then we get a no. All the way down, we can double check and see that patients that did receive amoxicillin, we have a yes. So we can just copy down this formula once again. And this way we have if each of our patient has received amoxicillin, right? Now what we need to do is just to nest these three functions one inside the other, because we don't need to write three columns for one single piece of information. The way I would typically do this, you don't have to do this if you don't want to do it. But I come here to the first formula that we use, that is in cell C4. I come here to the formula bar. I don't know if you can see my cursor where it is. I highlight everything that's to the right of the equal sign, so search and whatever it is that is between parentheses. I press Control C. I get out of the cell. I go to the next one, which is cell D4. And where it's making a reference to C4, you can see here in the formula bar again. I highlight it, I delete it, and I press Control V. So I'm pasting the content of cell C4 into the reference that I had made previously to cell D4. I press Enter. The output doesn't change because it's the same. And then I do the same thing. I select everything that's to the right of the equal sign. I press Control C to copy it. I get out of that cell. I go to cell E4. And here where it's making a reference to cell D4, I delete the reference and I paste all of the content that I had before. When I press enter, the output does not change. So now we don't need column C or D anymore. We can just highlight these two columns. We right click on it and delete it. And of course, we did it just for the first line. So we get an error message for all the lines that are below, but we can just copy down the same function. So now for each of our patients, we have a dummy variable telling us if this patient received amoxicillin or if this patient did not receive amoxicillin. For the next ones, it's a bit easier. We can just come back here, select everything, including the equal sign. We press Control C to copy the content. We get out of the cell. We go to one cell, one column to the right. We come here on the formula bar and we press Control V. Now, the only thing we need to do is that we need to come inside the quotation marks where it says for amoxicillin. I'm going to delete that and I'm going to type CEF for ceftriaxone. When I press enter, I get a yes because this patient received ceftriaxone. So this here, ceftriaxone. I come here to column E. I go back to the formula bar. I paste the same thing that I had copied before. Instead of AMO, that's here in between quotation marks, I'm going to delete AMO and I'm just going to write the VIT for vitamin A. I press enter. Now I have a dummy variable telling us if the patient received vitamin A or not. And one third time, I come here on the formula bar again. I press Control V. I come here to the text that I was searching for. Instead of AMO, I delete that and I write tetra for tetracycline, of course. Now I get a no, and I just need to label this that this is for tetra. I select the three cells that I just worked on. I copy them down. And now for each patient, I have these four dummy variables telling us if the patient received or did not receive each one of the medications. So ceftriaxone, this patient here that received ceftriaxone, paracetamol, and vitamin A. We have a yes for ceftriaxone, a yes for vitamin A, a no for amoxicillin, and no for a tetracycline.